So hello and welcome to Sassi Talks. This is the show where we bring you tips for positive lifestyle choices. And on today's programme we have Jessica Robson. She is the founder of Run Talk Run, which is a running group designed to help people talk about their problems and their struggles while they are on a run. So Jessica, thank you very much for being on Sassi Talks. I'm hoping you're going to give us lots of insights into how running can inspire people to open up, shall we say. How does it work?
So Run Talk Run is a mental health peer support community, and the premise of our groups is that we meet on a weekly basis at the same time, same place, and come together to run a gentle 5-kilometre route together. Now, it's not just a running club. Of course, we are moving, but the priority of our groups is to create a safe space on those runs, to be able to talk about how we're feeling, whether that's positive or not, and for that to be a safe and non-judgmental space. A lot of running groups require you to turn up with lots of energy and positivity, but we're quite the opposite of that. We're far more chilled.
Got it. So you start at the same place. I understand you've got about 170 groups or so currently, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And where are these? Are they across the UK, worldwide?
Predominantly in the UK, but we do have several overseas as well, a few in America and a few across Europe as well. So it's growing a lot, yes, but most of them are in the UK.
Interesting. So you start at the same place each week. And how is that? I mean, do people come together that know each other?
So we do tend to get people who become regular runners who make it a real part of their routine, and that consistency every week is actually what supports them with their mental health, to make it part of their routine. But then we do have people who will come sporadically, who you might see once or twice a year, and they only use Run Talk Run as and when they need it. So some people might seem like strangers, you'll only see them once or twice, but actually the majority of our Run Talk Run communities get to know each other very, very well, and they do become a consistent group of people.
I was wondering, how easy is it to run and talk effectively at the same time? I mean, I used to do athletics, and I know when you're pushing yourself, even on the treadmill in the gym, it's really, really difficult to have a conversation if you're going to train effectively. So is the focus more on talking or on physical exercise, would you say?
The focus is absolutely on the talking. Yes, we do say we are not here to be one of your training runs. And if the pace is so hard that we can't talk, then that pace is too fast. And that does sometimes mean that we slow it down to even walk at points, just so that we are able to keep that conversation going. We believe strongly that we want it to be for all abilities. So if that means walking half of the route, then we're okay with that.
Do you stay together as a group for that whole 5 kilometres, or do you break into little, 2s and 3s? Or how does it typically work?
I mean, naturally, of course, people will pair off a little bit because you're having quite intimate conversations, but the group does stay together throughout the whole run. And of course, at a Run Talk Run, you're going to have different people of different abilities turning up. So some people will be naturally faster, but it's the responsibility of those faster people to loop back and make sure that we stay as a group, rather than the responsibility of the people at the back to keep up. So yes, we do try and run as one.
And what made you start this, Jess?
So it's largely driven by my own experiences with mental ill health. I have experienced depression, anxiety, bulimia on a fluctuating basis throughout my whole life. And in 2017, I found myself depressed again, and in a very, very dark place. And I was doing all the tick box things that I should be doing. I was seeing a therapist and I was taking my antidepressants. But I was finding it very, very hard to actually open up in therapy. It was like I closed up even more the moment I stepped up into that room. But what I was doing was actually seeking comfort through going home to my parents when I was in that place. And my mum would drag me out to run. I think that was her way of helping me, her only sort of way to know how to get me going. And I just discovered that it was a lot easier to talk about the heavy stuff and the dark thoughts that I was having actually when I was running. And so it kind of got to the end of that summer of 2017, and my mum gave me a nudge and said, Jess, you need to find some running friends in London. So I came back, had a look at the communities that existed, and they all just seemed so intimidating. I think where I was in that depressed state, they all seemed far too high energy and far too positive and just scary.
Now, were these running groups that were specifically for mental health, or they were just running groups?
They were just your typical running groups. I don't think at the time I was necessarily looking for peer support. I was just looking for a gentle running group where I felt I could feel like I could run and talk. And I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a group that didn't seem too scary, so I created my own.
Can you give us an idea of how these conversations start? Because talking to complete strangers about personal matters to you in itself sounds quite daunting, and then to do it while running at the same time. How do you see these conversations beginning?
Yeah, so at a Run Talk Run, it's not necessarily that we force the conversation on mental health, but we remind the people attending that we are a support group, and we remind them frequently. And it's through those reminders that people feel that they have the permission to bring the heavy stuff. Without those reminders, I don't think people necessarily would start talking about mental health. And at the start of every single group, we invite people to share how they're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, which is a very simplistic but a very accessible way just to share a little bit about how you're feeling. Without all the context and going deep, it's a way to sort of say, actually, I'm a 3 out of 10 today. And then suddenly the group has an awareness that, okay, this person might need someone to talk to on this run. And that's how we sort of get the ball rolling. I often invite runners to maybe share with one particular runner what their number was whilst we're out. But there's no pressure for them to do so if they don't feel ready.
That's a really good icebreaker, actually. I like that, because you're from the get-go understanding where the person you're running with is at on that particular day. So you can adjust your approach to them, I would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no sort of pressure to share why your number is what it is. And I think that's what people worry about the most. They don't necessarily want to say why they are feeling how they are. But just to simply tell someone I'm not 100% is enough.
And what sort of conversations have you found yourself having on these runs with individuals? I mean, obviously we don't know who these individuals are, but what's the depth of the discussion, shall we say, or the talk that they offer?
It varies massively. So I find that with the people that I've now been running with for years, I have built up that context around their life. I know them so well that actually our conversations do go very deep. I understand their circumstances, and we're able to talk very freely about those circumstances and how tough that might be, whether that is their diagnosis with mental ill health or whether that's just, their home life. We can talk about those things to great depth. I find that for those who are perhaps new to Run Talk Run, that sort of depth of conversation varies person to person, depending how quick they are to trust the environment that they're in. And it might just stay like your surface level stresses for a while whilst we get to know each other. So the conversation might look like, I don't know, more like work stress that they'll bring to the conversation, which is maybe a bit easier to talk about.
Obviously, yourselves, you're not counsellors, so can I assume that this is more of a listening support group rather than advisory?
Yes, yeah. So our primary aim is to provide a safe space to listen and talk. And then actually the important part of what we do is to signpost. if we do feel that one of our fellow runners needs further support, then we all have a responsibility, not just the leader of the group, but all of us have a responsibility to then signpost that person onto maybe a suicide helpline or another charity who might be able to support further.
Have you noticed that you've been able to help individuals quite significantly with this? I mean, what's the sort of feedback that you've had?
Yeah, so I think, again, it varies massively. Everyone comes at different points in their lives. And so like you'll have people who have never run before in their life and are now actually using running now because of Run Talk Run as a way to manage their mental health and their physical health, which they never would have done before because, I mean, as I pointed out, running groups do look quite scary if you've never run before. So that's probably the most common sort of impact that I see. But then you'll also have a lot of people who experience a bit of imposter syndrome with mental health. And what I mean by that is they know they're struggling a bit, but they don't feel like they're ill enough to go to their GP, or they don't feel like they're ill enough to go to therapy. But we are that middle ground. And so I feel like our impact is in that middle ground where people know they need to talk, but don't feel ready for professional support.
I think it's a great concept. You can also start your own group. So for people listening and watching this, they can start their own running groups. How would they set that up?
Absolutely, yes. We encourage anyone to sort of reach out if you feel that your hometown doesn't already have a Run Talk Run or is something that you're motivated by. To reach out, I would suggest going through the website runtalkrun.com. All your emails will come straight into my inbox and I'll be able to support you and give you the next steps of what happens.
Absolutely, sounds great. I'm going to have a look at myself and see what run groups there are in the area where I am as well. So Jess, what would you say are the key takeaways? Like, what would you want people to take away from this interview today?
So I think the primary takeaway I would want people to come away with is just to know that you're not alone with maybe your struggle with mental health or the way that you're feeling. If I've learned anything through Run Talk Run is that actually a lot of the time what we're feeling is something that other people can relate to. We're very rarely on our own with struggling. Okay, and I think our brains have a good way of sort of making us feel like we are the only ones to be feeling the way we are, which isn't true. And the second takeaway would probably be just to give something new a go, whether that's Run Talk Run or something entirely different. If there is something that intrigues you, be that running, climbing, going to your local library, and you're a bit scared to try it, just try it once. That's all it will take to make you realise that it isn't half as scary as you think it is.
Thank you very much for being on Sassi Talks. I think it's a fantastic initiative, a brilliant programme, and I really encourage anybody who feels that they are in a position that they want to speak and don't feel that they can go to see a counsellor or speak to their doctor at this stage, as Jess said, with a feeling of imposter situation. I would encourage this as well. I think it's a really, really great programme, and I myself am also going to be looking to see what run groups there are in the area and seeing who I can inspire and encourage to join one. So Jess, thank you very much for being on Sassi Talks.
Oh, thank you for having me here.